Good morning. I'm on a few minutes early again today as we begin reading through First Chronicles. We've got some guys coming to do some work in the yard again. They should be here pretty soon, so I just thought I'd get going. But First Chronicles begins, the first 9 chapters deal with genealogy, beginning with Adam, the genealogy of the Israelites, and it's a very very brief look at the genealogy and all of the people from Adam through Solomon, somewhere in there. And then chapters 10 through the end of the book deal with the reign of King David, and end with his death and the Solomon being installed as king. It kind of follows a little bit from some of what we read in First Kings and in Samuel as well. This book is written between 500 and 400 years before Christ, so it's quite a while after the exile, or I should say exile, after the Jerusalem, Judah, and Israel have been, conquered. And we ended Second Kings with Babylonian Empire, coming in and conquering Judah and, taking over them, and many of the people dispersed. So there were very few Jews living anymore in Israel or in Judah. They were taken out of the countries. There was a remnant there, and we read several times about the remnant of Israel, and they were some of the few that were left in the land that God had promised to them. I guess I'll just start briefly. The genealogies go quickly. The first 4 verses, it's Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so we have, beginning with Adam, but not all of his kids. But then Noah, it lists his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who were on the ark. It was Noah and his 3 sons and families, those 8 that, survived through the ark. And then verse 5 begins with listing the grandsons, it would be then, of Noah, and going on through, and you read through, verse 11 or verse 8, the descendants of Ham are Cush, Egypt, here's Egypt. And there's, and Canaan is in there, Canaan is one of the sons of one of these. And so some of the names of the lands, come from these people, or, people who take their names, depending on the lands and things that way too. But, I often don't read through all of these names because I can't keep track of them in my head. I mean, but they used to do it. I mean, by pure memory, and the Native Americans, so much of custom and history was by verbal speaking, by people hearing it so many times and remembering it, and that basically, the Bible verses, the things that we know in our heads are there because, they're important to us, and we work on learning them and knowing them. And so for the early record keepings of people, there were people that spent, their whole lives working with the histories and knowing and telling. And I remember, visiting with some of the older people, when I was growing up in McHenry, and hearing them tell the stories of McHenry when it was new and young, and everything that was going on, and the wealth of knowledge they had, about my hometown, and my dad, telling the the stories of how he grew up. And this is how history is made. You know, history happens, but when it's written down, it's, you know, the perspective of this person. And so as we read different books in the Bible, you know, like, you know, Chronicles now, I mean, it's going to tell some of the same stories that we've already read. And when we get to the prophets, they'll tell some of the stories we've already talked about, but they're written from a different perspective. So we get a little bit different viewpoint. But, you know, it just keeps going on, the descendants of this and this and this, you know, and like verse 11 was Egypt became the father of these, and Canaan, verse 13, became the father of these. And then, the descendants of Japheth weren't very many. The descendants of Ham were there, you know, several verses. And then verse 17, we finally get to the descendants of Shem, you know, the three sons of Noah, and going through them. And then it, you know, and then we, you know, it just kind of goes on from there. And, you know, you try to picture in your mind this family tree drawn out, you know, with Adam up at the beginning and all these lines, and, you know, how wide are we getting and how many lines are we getting in every row now by the time we get, you know, down here to, you know, the sons of Seir in verse 38, you know, there's just boom, 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 you know, and they had huge families. I mean, you know, they lived, some of these, like, you know, Methuselah and Noah, I mean, they lived for, you know, a lot more years than we do now. And they had, you know, many more sons. And maybe some of, you know, as we read in, not so long ago about, you know, like maybe some of the sons that are listed are actually grandsons, but, you know, they're descendants. And they're talking about all of that. And then, like verse 43 of chapter 1, these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites, you know. And so here now we're, you know, these are kings of other nations before the kings of Israel, because, you know, God was leading the Israelites. They didn't have a king until they started crying out for a king. And then, you know, Saul was their first king. But, you know, so the first 42 verses are all genealogy. And then here we have a listing of kings of some of these, you know, the king who reigned in the land of Edom, you know, and then it lists a whole bunch of them. And then chapter 2 begins with, these are the sons of Israel, you know, Jacob, who became Israel. So it's, you know, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, you know, it's the 12 tribes of Israel. So we have them listed here again. And then, you know, and then we're going to, you know, read through the descendants, you know, the sons of each of those 12 tribes of Israel again. And it's, you know, it's interesting to see them, to put some of the names together and see how, you know, like I mentioned, Egypt and Canaan, and, you know, so how some of these names of children may have impacted, you know, names of lands and different things. Or, I don't know all of that for certain, but it spells out, you know, the descendants that way. Chapter 3 begins with, these are the sons of David, King David. We just read not so long ago about King David. And here, you know, these first few chapters, or first few verses tell us that, you know, when David was king of Judah, you know, 7.5 years, you know, his firstborn and this and that. And it says 6 were born to him in Hebron, where he reigned for 6 months. And then, or this was in the northern kingdom, sorry. And then, and during the 33 years in Jerusalem, you know, now it lists those who were born to him in Jerusalem. And Solomon was one of those that's listed in there, because, you know, Solomon becomes king after David. And verse 10, now then the descendants of Solomon. And we've read briefly some of that. But even though I get bogged down in genealogies and maybe don't read every line and every paragraph very diligently, it's good for us to know our history. And it's good for us to know that God faithfully led his people Israel through all of the, through everything that way. And by knowing how God led and guided Israel, we trust that God still is active in the world today, leading, guiding, teaching, watching over, and, giving us the provisions that we need for each day. And so we'll continue, the next few days, we'll read some more genealogy and we'll learn more about King David and his reign as we continue to read the book of 1 Chronicles.